I will apologize for being late. I was all excited showing Jen that the website actually showed up, and we have like 3 or 4 friends, I mean close friends that are excited for my launch too. So it's always kind of cool to see that, and a couple are developers, and they're like, "Oh, our teams could use this kind of stuff." And well, yeah, how to write a unit test, that's an important thing, right? So yeah, it's been exciting. So let's see. Now I got to remember where we were, um, what we were doing. Oh, we ran unit tests last time, right? And everything bombed because everything's out of whack. So let's write unit tests, right? And fix the unit tests and figure out what's going on and figure out what we have tested right and what we don't have tested right. So I can tell you right now, part of it is we have an API handler service that we made into an abstract API handler service. So our test is looking for an actual class that it can spin up, but this is an abstract class. So we somehow have to make it into a class, right? So that we can test that class. So we can't test API service directly. We can test it indirectly. So to make an API service into what, we've got things that have to change. So we don't have a get test in there anymore. So let's actually just clean this out first, and then we'll talk about how to do that. So we don't have get test. Get test is somewhere else. And actually, let's not do that. Let's cut it out because we can reuse that, right? We have get test in one of our other tests, and I think there it is. It's in the home API server. So guess what probably needs those tests that we wrote earlier, right? There are going to be a couple little things we have to bring in. Import. Oh, stop that. Import. And then order is important since we have linting in now. Yeah. Come on. That was weird. I had to do that 2 steps. Okay. That's all right. So now we probably have appropriate tests here. We're probably really close. The biggest thing to remember, though, is in the use of our abstract class, we do this extends, we have to do the super. We don't necessarily have to have the HTTP to test it, right? We just have to be able to spin it up. So this is kind of the basic we need. We don't even need the injectable. This is not something that has to spin up for Angular. We just kind of need that. Actually, we probably just need this as our basis. And we need the constructor and the super. So let's grab a little bit more just to simplify. We don't need to get test. So in our mocking here, we can get rid of that get URL. I guess I just copied it instead of cut it. That's okay. And then we have to do something here. We have to set up a little bit. So we need to new up. We won't need the from and of. We need to new up a test class, right? So we're just going to paste that in here real quick. And we'll call this test service. And our test service doesn't need a behavior subject, but it doesn't need HTTP. Okay, and the nice part then is we probably don't need the HTTP client testing module because we're not actually making any HTTP calls in our API handler service. Okay, because it is an abstraction for the get request or for the get URL. So we can get rid of that. It means that whole imports can go away. Makes that easy. But we're not injecting the API handler service. We need to be injecting the test service. So this is going to be the type and what we're doing up. So the service we're actually going to use is this service, which doesn't look like it has a lot, right? But it's extending the API handler service. So if we go to our definition of the API handler service, we'll move it to the side so we can see both of them on the screen at the same time. What we're actually building is a service that extends this one, which means it has this get URL, which means we can test that. Okay. So now we can test get URL. It doesn't look like it's there, but because we're extending it, it is an available function. Okay. And we're going to be creating several API services like the home API service with the different components that might need it. So we want that get URL to be exactly the same, regardless of which one it's in. Okay, but we do want to test it, right? So get URL has two routes through. We passed in that underscore window, which is one that I do because it seems weird to pass window in, but it also lets me mock what window is. I can create a mock of window itself that has a location, that has a host, that's an array, so that we can determine whether it includes GitHub IO or not, which allows us to go through our branching, right? So beyond that, the only other thing we need to worry about is endpoints. And because that's just a data value on the class, we can manipulate it all we want down here for our tests. So we need to write basically a maximum of 2 tests, or minimum, sorry. So it expects get URL to handle GitHub IO host screen. Sounds like a good name, right? And this naming is important. Just the biggest thing in the naming is, in my mind, is I like to know which function it is, and I wrap it in the double quotes to make it super clear when it runs which function it is. Because when you get an error, the last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time trying to figure out where the problem is, right? We want to get there as fast as we can. And these descriptions should be unique. Don't just, if you copy paste, which you can do with tests, you'll find that you'll reuse a lot of these test patterns all over the place. Make sure you change the description, because the worst is going, oh, handle GitHub IO hosting, and you do a search for that and you find 3 of them. Now you got to figure out which one of those 3 was the one that failed, right? If they're unique, even if it's just a 1, 2, 3 at the end, that's enough to tell you when it fails. Which one is it? Okay. All right. So we know it's going through the window location host, but we actually need to update that. So let's create our mock. So const win. Well, what is the underscore? So it matches what's in there. That's okay. I think that's all right. It's going to be of type any. So it does match. And it has a location. So it's an object. It has a location. And the location has a host object with a host key. And since it's using includes, that's an array. And we're saying it includes, and it could be a string. I think that's actually what we're looking at with host, is a string. So it's just HTTP something. And GitHub IO just has to be somewhere in there. It doesn't have to be real, just has to be enough to trigger it. Okay. And get some cleanup in there. Good. So that's all we really need to force it through that if block at the beginning. So then it should return this endpoints, GitHub pages, and whatever key we pass in. So now we need to set up the key stuff. So we'll say const key string equals tests. Make a test key. So if we're going to use test key, we need to update endpoints. So service endpoints sub key equals something. Oh, it has to be endpoint GitHub pages key, right? I have 3 boys here today. They're bouncing on the ceiling. Yeah, 3 11-year-olds that are ready to be teenagers any day. All right, so that matches our key pattern on the endpoint. So we need to give it something. Doesn't matter what it is. Endpoint value. Oh, you guys, yay. Oh, that's cold. Put it on your lip, suck on it. Pinch you bulk your lip. All right, go get mama so she can help you with your lipping. Yes. All right. Can mama help you put your pants on? All right. Well, she's not gonna be able to help you with the pants if you don't take the pants. It's a day with kids today. Yes. All right, so we have this endpoint value that should be what's returned, right? So then we need to trigger things. So we're going to do a const result, which we know it's going to be a string coming back, equals service get URL. We need to send it the key, which we've already defined, and the underscore window, which we've already created. And that should run it. We're going to expect the result to equal endpoint value. Does that look like a test? That looks like a test, but might actually do what we expect. Now, I expect it's going to give us the right result, and I know we got this next return in here we need to take a peek at. And normally I'd probably write both of those at one time, but since we're kind of showing you guys how this is done, let's jump in and just run this. Okay, so we're going to open our terminal. And expand that up a little bit so you can see what's going on. And it might bomb out on other stuff, but we're going to find out. So yeah, we're in, that's far enough in. Just run ng test. Now we can ng test for the specific file if we wanted to too, but I tend to just run the whole thing, and whatever error it is that it screams at me about is the one that I go in and fix next. Okay. Hey, now if I don't remember if you guys watched the last session or you were here for the last session, but we didn't get this far. We bombed out because it was trying to new up the API handler service, which is the abstraction, and it just, I mean, it failed badly. So the fact that we got 9 failures and 9 successes is a step forward. That's a big step forward. Okay? And most of these are probably we got the wrong pieces injected in the wrong places, or we don't have some things injected in that need to be injected in. Okay. And at this point, we'll just work from the bottom up. Okay. We got enough fixed to allow us to move forward. We need to, I need to remember that we've got to come back in here and write one more test against get URL. We could do that right now. We could do that later. I don't think it matters too much. And actually so that I don't forget it, why don't we just write it right now? So we're going to expect get URL to handle everything else except beyond GitHub IO, right? Sure. So this will be, let's make this localhost. Easy enough. And so if it's doing localhost, then this is no longer going to be GH pages. It's going to be localhost. And you can see that right there. It's going to use localhost if it's not using GitHub pages, right? There is a key used, but we're going to have this localhost prefix that gets added in. And we'll have to look up what that prefix is. And then our endpoint that has localhost in the key, which is similar to what we did up here with the GH page. So we're getting this endpoint value injected in. It's added to whatever that prefix is. So we need to see that localhost prefix to give it the right returned string, okay? Because the two are added together. Whereas here on endpoints, we didn't add them together for the GitHub IO. We give it the full path. So if we take a look at these constants real quick, we look at the config. In localhost, we have this prefix that we add. On GH pages, we don't add the prefix. It's just root. Okay, so we'll copy that. And we'll come back to our tests. And so it's going to be something like that. Endpoint value doesn't have a slash in front of it the way these do. So if we wanted to be consistent, we would do something like this. Because that's the expected, right? Expected to have those slashes. So now we have 2 tests that should fully test this function. Now, eventually, when we have our database hosted somewhere else, we're going to need another. We're going to need a third. We're going to need something to be able to work off of localhost. We're going to need something to work off of. We may move the localhost, maybe point the localhost to the database in the right place. But wherever our API endpoints are running through, we're going to have that on some service eventually. So we'll need 3 of them. So when we have 3 like that, we'll probably, instead of doing if this, else this, we'll just put a case statement. In this case, do this. In this case, do this. The default is do this. Okay. Yeah, so let's run our tests and see where we're at. I'm assuming we still have 9 failing, but we should have 10 successes though. 11-year-olds playing video games, lots of screaming. I'm hoping you're not hearing most of that. Okay, we had 10 failed. Well, that's an interesting set of failures that we shouldn't have had, but okay, let's work this stack. I like to work them from the bottom up just because it's clearing one more off the list, right? Let's work them from the bottom up. Okay. We're getting an injector error. We're missing mat dialog ref in the register modal component. All right, so register modal component should be one of our features. No, should be one of our shared then. There it is. So we created this component and we have this set of tests that it doesn't like how it's laid out. That's okay. Don't care how it's laid out. Oh, I didn't do all of them. Here we go, fix all. And we're missing mat dialog ref. All right. Well, I would guess if we take no injector error, no provider for mat dialog ref, but you're going to see some pretty little. Hey, I've seen this before, right? So let's go look at SO, Stack Overflow, awesome place. Can't inject. All right, as per the documentation. Blah, blah, blah. So it needs to go into the imports and its mat dialog module. All right, we don't need the dialog service. We just need that. But we do need the mat dialog ref. This is the other interesting part that we need. We need to provide the mat dialog ref. This use value is something we can tweak a little bit, but let's get the module in. So let's bring this over and adding that into our test suite. And then we need to import the dialog module and then provide. Okay, so import. And provides providers. And providers are interesting and fun, and it's probably just screen it a little bit, but it's a mat dialog graph. And use value. Use value is one of the options we can use, and I think it's use value. Let's double check. Use value, yep. That says, hey, I'm injecting mat dialog graph, but I want you to actually inject this instead. Okay, so when the constructor says, hey, I need mat dialog ref, we're going to use this. Okay, we need to look at how we're using dialog ref, because right here we have close on mat dialog ref. Well, here's the thing. By doing it this way, there is no close. So it actually would fail there if we tried to run either of these two functions. So what we can do is create a mock. And if I suspect I'm going to use this more than once, guess what? We're using it more than once. Register modal, login modal. I'll create something in the shared spec tools that I can then import this. But for now, we'll put it in this way. We know we need a close. And we know the close is a function. Nothing more complicated than that. Because these don't actually have to do anything from a testing perspective. We're going to validate the data that's passed in. But it doesn't actually have to close anything to test that function, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I see Katie kind of scrunching her eyes up and almost nodding her head. All right. So we're going to do a mock dialog graph. And it's only complaining about layout, I suspect, at the moment. So let's fix other fixable problems. There we go. Now, in theory, that's all we need to fix on that. Test that out. Let's make sure it works, and then we'll clean up the mocking thing. That's actually pretty easy to do. And the nice thing is this is not the work del, which takes forever to spin this stuff up. Yeah, we still have 10 failed. Now what happened here? So what do we have? No provider for mat dialog ref in the register module. Oh, there we go. Save the file always helps. Your code runs much better when it's actually saved. And that whole theoretical, I created something, but
Schrodinger's code.
Created it all in my mind. Yes. So we're getting no provider for a Mat dialog graph, which is interesting because we have providers now for Mat dialog graph, which is now going to bug me because it should have Mat dialog graph, which is right there because we said, hey, here's Mat
I
dialog
think one
graph.
of the comments on the Stack Overflow said something about how they had to tweak something on that answer.
I don't know.
Brilliant. I also had to add provide Mat dialog data.
Along with a use value. Okay, we'll try it. Actually, it does make some sense, but we're not using the Mat dialog data, although I don't know, maybe it needs it for a default reason or something like that. So we'll push that down. It's going to complain for a second. Come on. Maybe a comma there. There we go.
I assume it doesn't apply, but I figured we'd give it a try.
Yeah, no, it's. We'll need to bring Mat dialog data in. We're not passing it any data, so it really doesn't matter. And import. So that adds it to your imports. Your import orders out of order. And it fixes everything there and fixed everything there. And yeah, so let's try that.
And if not, just Control Z the heck out of it.
Well, maybe. It's very possible that's part of the problems. According to this, it's not. So, okay. All right. So we need to dig a little further and figure out what's going on. I'm wondering if we can just comment these out at the moment and do Mat dialog ref. No, we can't just bring it in that way. All right. So let's go back and, this is okay. I'm okay with testing it that way. Remember, this is 2021, so it's a couple years old. Solve problem by importing Mat dialog module, Mat dialog ref. Did we have module? We did bring in module imports. Okay. Importing Mat dialog module. Mat dialog and Mat dialog. He imported those.
Did you have just the Mat dialog?
I'm sorry, I had two people talking at once there.
Oh, sorry, did you bring in Mat dialog?
I have not. No. I don't normally have to. That's where I'm. Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, let's bring in Mat dialog. And we need to import. So what's he saying? He imported Mat dialog module, Mat dialog, and Mat dialog. He imported those three. All right. So that doesn't sound right, but we'll try it. Okay. Yeah. I know it's declared and it's not used. And I know it's out of order and all of that because it's not going to matter because we'll probably end up taking it out. But we'll bring that in as an import. and see what it does. Might have to go back to, might take a look at some of my other code because I've tested this before and it shouldn't be this complicated. All right. Look, we have a different error. That's a new 10th error. We still have 10 errors, but that's a new 10th one, right? So that's API, that's API, that's API. That's home. Let's make sure that Matt dialog, make sure that register modal is not in here. There's home, login, header. So register is in here, unexpected value Matt dialog imported. So it changed what happened. And it didn't declare it properly. So this didn't get rid of the error, it hid the error. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna go look at. I'm gonna go to my resources instead of somebody else's resources. You'd have to listen to me for a minute. I'm probably gonna have to hop off and back on again for a second because my editor is going to be 3 screens over on this machine. Why is it not liking my password? What's wrong? Caps lock, all caps lock. Oh, I know what's going on. Okay, we can't do it that way. Let's see, where else might I have that? All right, we're gonna have to find it. This is, we're off here. So see, we're not injecting Matt dialog, which is why I don't think the Matt dialog is where the problem is. That's an injector pad. That's not what we want there. We're not, it's not optional. Well, I mean, we guess we could make it optional, but it's not optional. Not worry about that. Writers. So here he's providing Matt dialog ref with the used value. Wait. Something's wrong with what we typed in. I just realized we need to provide. I'm betting we don't need that. I'm betting we don't need this. We weren't telling it to provide Matt dialog ref. We were just had, yeah, the referencing was weird. Hey, we're down to 9. We got 1 fixed. Now the nice part is that we'll be able to reuse that. Okay. For the input. Oh yeah, it's layout now. And a couple of things we don't need up here, which as soon as I take those out, it's going to go, hey, fix the layout. There we go. So we now have a test that works. And my guess is that one of these other 9 is going to be login modal. Okay. So let's go look at the login modal test because it's going to have almost the exact identical problems that we just had with the fact that it's a modal, right? So guess what we can copy? It's going to be nearly identical. Now we have this thing we have to take care of, which is easy enough. We're going to come over here to shared spec tools. And this isn't a component, then this isn't a service. This is dialog ref. I'm going to put this under components. Just there's no real clean place for that. So we'll create a new file under there. That's going to be mock dialog ref spec. By naming them spec, it allows the Angular TypeScript to kind of ignore the file. And then we just need to export. And I think it's just an export. Yep, see, we're just exporting here. Okay, and I disable. Why do I want to? Oh, that's the has to start with app. Yeah. Now it's going to complain because I clicked on the file. That our typing is wonky. Fix auto fixable. Disable for that line. There we go. So a lot of these are going to have that, I suspect. Yeah. Small linting problems. So these were probably put in before the linting. Block that from the linting and fix that. There we go. So now all of our mock guys are cleaned up, saved, and we can import this mock dialog graph. So we need to import mock. No, it's mock. There it's like that. And you're complaining probably because of our import order. There we go. And we need that. Now we have that there. So it's now importable, right? So in our other, on the login, we need that one over here too, right? So then we bring in our imports. We bring in our providers. And now we've got the dialog graph available for there. So we now, when we rerun our tests, if all of my files are saved, we should now be down to 8. So what I end up doing is when I'm working on unit tests, this is one of the things I do. I go through these kind of phases. So the first thing is, if your tests are completely failing and you're not even seeing a count, you got to fix that one problem. Okay, because it's only going to give you one error. Something was big enough, we can't run the rest of the tests. Okay, so you got to fix that one. And you might have to do that a couple of times. And the fact that we're seeing those big blue things, that's a good sign. We'll fix those too. The second round is fix any of these broken. You've got failed tests. Third round is you got to go through and find all these goofy little, hey, input doesn't have ng model. These are warnings. Okay, they say errors, but they're warnings. These are Angular errors. They're not test errors. They're annoying because they just take a lot of space and they can be cleaned up. It's actually fairly easy to clean those up. So I go through and I fix those kind of things. Then I go back and I look at my test coverage, which we haven't even gotten to running a test coverage report yet. Okay. We haven't reached that point. We're going to get there. Not in 20 minutes, but we're going to get there. Okay. So this is just the first phase. So we're running through here now. We've now cleared. Wait, we should have had 8. Didn't we have had 8? Should have had 8. All right, we'll go back and we'll figure out what I did wrong. Supposedly I did something wrong because we have 9 failures. We should have had 8 failures. I don't care what the failure problem is. Let's go find the next failure. And we're seeing header API service HTTP client. That's a pretty common one. So header API service. We took the HTTP handler out of our API handler service. So here's one where your proper branching and those kind of things will really help. Okay. So in the how to take a test, we're currently on the feature branch 5, and I pushed everything up before I started. So if I want to see what the API handler service looked like beforehand, I can look right in here. I can go online. I can look it up because online on that branch, I have the original. But we have this HTTP test. We imported this HTTP client testing module. So we need that for the header API service. So let's go find our header API service. Not home. Header API service. So header API service, well, we don't want to do that to the service. We want to do this to the test, right? So we need to bring in the HTTP client testing module. We're eventually going to need from and of. Almost guarantee we're going to need those because if you're doing API handling, you need from and of. And so we're letting it handle. That's right. We need to import the HTTP client testing module. Easy enough. And testbed inject. And that should be enough. Now, if we look in our code, we have send login, we have send logout, we have this user, we have send registration. We do need to test all that. And that's where from and of are going to come in. And we have patterns to speed that up a little bit. But this should be enough to stop this broken test. Should. And part of why we're getting these blue at the bottom now is these tests are set to run in a random order every time. Part of random order is then you're sure that one test doesn't depend on another one. Okay. So now we're down to 8, and I'm seeing HTTP errors here on the login modal. Login modal component is using the header API service. So here's an interesting one. Okay. The login modal component uses the header HTTP service. That's an interesting statement because we don't need to add HTTP. What we need to do is set it up so that when it uses that service, we use a mock service. So we brought in the header API service. We want to create a mock header API service so that we can inject that instead of the real header API service into the test. Okay. So to do that, we need to know what the header API service looks like. So we'll go to the definition. We'll bring it over to the side. And we don't need all this, right? We need to export a class header API service that extend. We don't need to extend because we're going to kind of fudge things over there. So we need that, but we need that in our spec tools, in our whole, and this is a service, so we're going to create a service folder. And we need a file. Well, it's going to be mock header API service spec yes, and we're going to export our mock header API service. And I know it's going to complain about things. So I'm not worried about that. Okay. We need a service we can new up. Our constructor doesn't have to have anything in it. We're just mocking things. What we really need in our mock header are things like logged in user. We really don't need that, but we can bring that in if we really want to be nice. It doesn't hurt. Why are we complaining there? Oh, because of the quotes. There we go. We need that. So we need a send login function. It doesn't have to be any more than that. An empty function. It doesn't have to do anything. It just has to have enough there that we stop complaining. That we can then spy on these and see what was sent to them. All right. So send login, send logout is user. And there are other ways you could do this too that will work, but this one will work, I suspect. And send registrations. That's the last one of those we have. Okay, because the thing is here is we want to isolate. We want to isolate the login modal so that it's not actually using an API service, right? We don't want to test the API service in conjunction with the login. We're isolating it, okay? We're isolating it with this mock. Okay, so we created that mock. So now in our, let's see, we don't need our header API service anymore. We need our test suite. So here we've got to bring in another mock. We're going to import mock header API service. And since we have the Met dialog, we got a lot of the patterning we really need in here because we're going to provide header API service. So it brought it in. I like them to be alphabetical, but I'm not going to complain about that if it's not going to complain about it. And we need to use value. We're telling it, hey, you know, when you call for header API service, use this one. And guess what? That one has no requirements on HTTP. So that whole HTTP error should disappear. because we isolated our test suite. There. Weird. Okay. So okay with that. That's a strange order, but all right. Linting is doing that. So we should have enough now that we get rid of this header API service dependency on HTTP and the HTTP client because we mocked it out. It doesn't have it in the mock, right? So it should be enough now to drop one more error. Starting to see what we're doing? Kind of painful, isn't it?
Yay, testing.
Well, this is painful when you write a whole bunch of code to see something happen and then go back. What you should be doing is small chunks. You know, hey, I created this new thing. I created this new function. Let's write a test on it. Let's verify that our tests are working. Well, we made something abstract. We created like 3 other services. We created 2 components that were modals. And so we're running into this. So now we get down to 7. We're getting closer. So home API service, HTTP client, that sounds familiar. And then the home API service should be created. It has a dependency on HTTP client. So if we look at the header API service tests, where we fixed the HTTP client problem, see how we're starting to see repeated patterns. Home API service probably has the same problem, and that's on the page. So we'll come over here to its spec file. And correct, we are not bringing in HTTP client testing module yet. Okay, because HTTP client testing module handles all that weird HTTP stuff for us. So absolutely okay with not having to write mocks for that because it does it for us. Okay, that should be all we need in that one to get rid of that error, which should take us down to 6. Pretty good for the time frame. Did somebody post the attendance stuff in the chat? I haven't even thought about that. Okay, good. Awesome. So we're down to 4. Look at that. We went from, yeah, well, remember we brought over get test. So these couldn't run because of the HTTP error. So they actually now ran. They didn't count as errors against us. So we've dropped 3 of them by fixing that one. That's kind of cool. Okay. And let's go through the next one. So header component is using the header API service. Okay, so header component is using the header API service. We just mocked something doing that recently, right? Which one was that in? That was in, that was in the header component that we mocked that. No, I guess it was. We just had one recently. Which one was it? It was one of the components. So hang on, I'm pulling this up because I can't remember which component it was we fixed that mock in. That wasn't that one. Oh, these are the actual mocks. Okay, so I don't want to look in the spec tools. There, no, there it is. That's the header API service, which was in the login modal component. So we have this pattern already. Okay, so this is in the header component. So we have that open. And we're going to be handling the mock header API service identical to how we're doing it in the login component. Okay, so come up here and we have this header API service we're bringing in. And let's pull that over here so it makes it easier to see all of them at once. We're going to bring that in and it go there. And we need the mock header API service because that is what we're talking about here. And it should be somewhere in there. I'm not sure what you're complaining about at the moment. Can't find, oh, because we're in a different place. /shared. Header brings us up, .. brings us to features. That takes us up another level. Shared, there we go. We just had to find the right routing for it. No big deal there. And so then the mock header stuff is in the providers. We don't have our providers yet, so we can bring the whole thing over and we'll fix it up once we bring it over. And yeah, providers. And we don't need the dialog ref on this one. So that should fix that because we're mocking the header API, so that fixes the HTTP client issue on that one. Now we should be down to 3. Nice part is once you get these patterns figured out, it's just patterns. It's copying and moving. Oh, we didn't go down to 3. All right. Well, what did we fail on? So the API handler service is failing. Okay. API handler service is failing. Okay. API handler service is failing. Okay. Header component needs Mat dialog. Header component. Oh, it needs Mat dialog and not Mat dialog ref. This is the opposite side of opening a modal. Okay. So it needs the Mat dialog, which means we probably just need to bring in the Mat dialog, not the Mat dialog ref, into the header component test. And that one's going to be there. So it's going to put it somewhere about here. We don't need the ref. I'm going to try this. So this would just be an import of the Mat dialog module. To potentially take it down to 30. There might be a little more I have to tweak on that. Don't think so. I don't know. We'll check. Probably should have looked at the imports in the actual header, but it got us down to 3. All right. And let's see, what do we have here? So we have 3 errors on our API handler service, which is all that mocking, stubbing, testing stuff that we did. So test service, no provider for test service. So let's go in there and see what we did and see where that's off. Okay, and this is all in that, in this guy. Okay. So it's saying null injector, no provider for test service. That's weird. Because it should have been the testbed injection of test service, which should have injected that. Yeah, let's see what that error brings up. I have this in someplace else, but I really don't want to log into the work computer. The keypad on the work computer is what's driving me nuts right now. All right. So here he's got a component service, he's got a view, he's got a component, Angular, no provider for name service. So he's bringing in this name service. He doesn't tell us, oh, there's name service. So he's just exported a class with name and constructor and get names. Okay. So we're doing it as a component provider's name service instead of injectable, but that should be, wow, okay. That's weird. But that's not what we're doing. We could try that. I don't know that that'll hurt anything to try. Let's see if the injectable will help. Might help. I'm not positive on this one. I've done this before, but it's been a while and it's on my work computer, and the work computer keypad misses keys. So when I go to type my password in, I typed it 3 times. I'm not trying it again for a little while. All right. So we're still getting no provider for test service. No provider for test service and no provider for test service. So the injectable didn't help us at all. And what I don't get there is when we look at these, we're doing the injectable provided en route, export class, We don't need to export because we're using it right there. So if we take that error and we say unit test, API service HTTP client. Okay, so that's a different error. The test service doesn't use tests. Oh, I know we did. Well, duh. No, I was going to say super would have been the problem. But we have the super. An API handler service doesn't need anything because it doesn't have, I mean, really, we can get rid of this constructor. What did I do? I can get rid of the constructor. We don't really need that. The super has to be triggered because we're extending. Injector error, test service, test service. All right, give me a second. I want to see what I did. This is going to bug me. I need my main keyboard. I may drop off sound. I will be back. Okay, I found the problem fast because my work computer is going to reboot in 10 minutes automatically. I don't have a choice. All right, so this was right. We did the let service test service correctly. I reworked the for each to new up our actual service. So service equals new test service. Then our test bed provider needs test service. Oh, it's rebooting. It was a very short 10 minutes. I had something else in another before each, but I think it was this. So let's try that and see if I got enough. Fingers crossed, right? If that doesn't work, I'll get this fixed later. We'll go into these other problems that we have. It's 50-50. This is right. That's right. So we had to new it up and provide it. Just a slightly different pattern because we're creating our own service internally here. Okay, so the other piece we have, and I'm going to take an extra, I was 10 minutes late, so I'm going to go 10 minutes over. If you need to drop off, drop off. Okay.
I think Katie also had a blocker she might want to talk about too.
I think
it's an ongoing blocker. It's okay.
All right. So when we get done, we'll talk about that after I stop the recording. All right. So let's take a look at some of these. These are going to be weird. This is most of what we're seeing here are NG model, here's mat label. And in a particular case, a mat form field, and the NG inputs. So my guess is on those. What's happening, and these are actually fairly common, is we have these modals now. These modals in their HTML have labels and form fields, and the input has an NG model. We're not properly using forms in the test that spins it up. Okay. And the same is going to be, it's going to be identical for the register modal. And So there are a couple pieces that will have to be imported and set up properly in the test suite for each of those. We'll start with the register test. And if we look at this on the side, we're using the mat dialog, which we should be importing the mat dialog module. Good. That takes care of a lot of those. We're using mat input, which we're not bringing in. Right? We're using mat form field, which we're not bringing in. So if we take one of these, and I'm guessing the vast majority are going to be in one realm. So let's see, mat labels going to be the one that I think will get us closest is probably going to be this one. There we go. Should get us closest to everything we need, a larger set. Okay. This is a pretty common error. We should see a lot of those out there. So let's go take a peek at that one. And blah, blah, blah. And he's going to go, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. I'm getting these errors. Why am I getting these errors? Look at your routing component. You declared login component in routing. You didn't import mat form field module. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And guess what? It's going to be probably the same for our test suite. So these get long. So mat dialog, but those are that's in mat dialog. So this is going to be import mat form field module. And we may need animations and things like that too. These should be imports. Let's see if that reduces that down any. This is going to be harder to see if it reduces down because there's no number on it. But you can see it's not real long, right? I mean, oh, that's in the 3 failed, which we know they're passing now. So all of the ones we have go from there. Look where our cursor is. Down to there. So it's about 2 pages worth, right? Let's put that one import in and see how many of that reduces it down. Mat form field is rarely ever the only thing you need to import there. That's the only reason I think we're probably still going to see some. We still should have 19 successes. Well, apparently not. Okay. Deprecated DI instantiation of a token. Okay. That inherits its injectable decorator but does not provide one itself. Oh. What that's saying is that's weird that we need injectable here. Let's see if that works. We didn't see those before because it took the injectable out. All right, so now we got rid of that. We created one new one. I don't know. I've ever seen that one before.
It's wacka code.
It is. It very much is. Yes. So we're trying to get rid of mat form field, but we're complaining about mat form field not containing a mat form field control in the register modal component, and the register modal component has a mat form field control, which is really strange. But we did get rid of that one little weird thing on the injectable one. So why are we getting that on the unit test? So let's come in here. We'll see unit test. Mat form field must maintain a mat form field controller. Occurs when an angular material form, that form field, is not associated with it's not associated with a form control. Okay, we didn't use the form control pattern. So now it's saying, hey, you got to have it. That's annoying. Which is what we have. In your module TS, input module, form field module. Got it. Only thing he did was he spelled something wrong there. Mat input. So it might be that we need the mat input, is what it sounds like. Okay, so ensure we have the proper form control. All right, so let's ensure we have the proper form control. I'm going to move that off so I can run through the list and look at what we have in our code. Okay, so we have a mat form field. We have an input. We have mat input, and it's spelled right. We have the ng model. That's spelled right. We don't have mat input in our unit test. So mat input comes from input. So well, let's bring that in. Just going to rerun. We'll run through the other ones if this doesn't solve it. It is. It's whack-a-mole. Big game of fun whack-a-mole. Unset. All right. So this is browser's animation module. I've seen this one. When you're dealing with forms, guess what you got to bring in? You got to bring in browser animation module. All right. And doesn't like my order. That's okay, because we're going to fix that. There we go. There we go. Puts it in the right place. And we import the browser animation module. And now it's complaining because we're getting too long. Forms are like this. You got to have like 16 things to do a form. It's just, oh. You go on and on and on. Eventually you get them all. And the next time you run into a form, you've got them all. So you don't have to worry about it again. You find those patterns.
They're hard to use. They're hard to test.
Yeah, but once they're set up, they're easy to deal with. Okay, so we got rid of our errors. We're back to our binding of ng model because it's not a property of input. But this is, look at this, is now telling us, this is, it used to not tell us where. These are all in login. We have one on register, but a lot on login. So register is missing a couple of these ng model issues on the input, which is slightly different, but the vast majority of the remainders are on the login model. So let's check this one out. Can't bind ng module. So that's slightly different than the one we've looked at. We went the lowest level. Now we're coming back to an upper level on this. If we get this out of the way, then the login becomes really easy because we'll have all the pieces we need to make that work. Okay, so this is slightly different. It's still, it's a 303 instead of a 304. Can't bind ng model. You can tell I've been here before. Okay, so we've got an ng model, we've got it, and it's on input. In our case, it's on a mat input. That's fine. But what it's going to say is, hey, you're missing forms module. Okay, so let's go back over to our code. And I'm betting in here we have not imported forms module. It's only going to complain there because of the order. There we go. So it puts forms module up there, and then we import forms module. So now all of our little blue things, hopefully, will all be on login, which means next time we can jump in and fix those really fast. Then we can actually get to writing tests. Okay, so login, login. So these are all login. which we were on register, so it makes sense that login would have the same problems that register has. It's a modal, it has inputs. There's just less inputs on login. They're still the same inputs. So the same kind of errors are going to occur. So next time we'll fix login and bring that forward so that we then can write a bunch of unit tests. So I haven't scheduled a Tuesday or Thursday. I will schedule a Tuesday or Thursday here sometime today. And we'll get to that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this session, chat with Katie a little bit about what she needs. We may record, we may not. Megan, Katie, if you guys want to stay on, anybody else could stay on if you want, but we're going to be talking SAS, I expect. All right. And how much it's frustrating them at the moment. But it will be recorded and you can watch it anytime. Okay. So let me stop this record.